So the first thing we're going to do is produce a title page on portraits and cubism. You can either work landscape or portrait, and we're going to give you two possible options on how you might want to complete this. So for the first option, you can produce a title page which has the heading Portraits and Cubism with some examples of Cubist work. We look at another example, again, Portraits and Cubism. Just make sure the examples of artwork you collect are all Cubist pictures, because as you will know, if you type something into Google and you look at images, it isn't always going to be accurate. So for example, this isn't a Cubist piece of work. It's a piece of work which has been done in the style of Cubism, but it actually isn't an original Cubist piece of work. Be careful to make sure the lettering is accurate in terms of size. Here you've got this R looks smaller than that R, and the lettering is getting a bit smaller because of guidelines aren't accurately used. And be precise with your colour. Maybe you could have gone around it with a fine liner. So that's the first option, portraits and cubism heading and some examples of pictures. The second option is to do the heading Portraits and Cubism. You don't have to collect any pictures, but you need to make the words Portraits and Cubism look like their meaning. So for example, we did this in the second year, making words look like their meanings. So before we do that, in order to make them look like their meanings, you need to have an idea what Cubism is.
People who knew Picasso said that his eyes were the first thing you notice. Deep pools of black, absorbing everything they saw. In Paris, those eyes were always on the move. Picasso looked constantly at art, at the old masters in the Louvre, and at more modern art, especially Cézanne, whose unstable style with doubled outlines and flattened space had begun to break with traditional perspective. Picasso also looked at the city itself as if it were a ceaselessly changing art exhibition. Coming to Paris, thinking about Picasso's Paris, you realise how closely connected his art and the city always were. Now, in his day, a building like this would have been absolutely covered with posters. There was no regulation of advertising. It would have been like a kind of living collage, and that inspired him to create an art form that changed the world, Cubism. Like the streets smothered in bill posters, like a Cézanne painting viewed through a kaleidoscope, Cubism would deal in flat blocks of colour and form, placed at different angles and depths. Picasso was also inspired by the café culture that Paris is most famous for. He said, "I want to say something using the most common object." What could be more everyday than reading a newspaper in your favourite café? Traditional painting freezes the world to a single frame and fixed perspective. But with Cubism, suddenly you see everything from many different planes and angles, as if you're moving through time and space. It was an attempt to be as true as possible to actual lived experience.
This is Picasso's art dealer, Ambroise Vollard. This is how Picasso saw him. A different vision of the way things really are. Cubism. Picasso was profoundly engaged with the work of other artists. And Cubism was created in direct collaboration with another painter, Georges Braque. For a while, Picasso jokingly called Braque
ma femme, my wife. They invented Cubism together almost as if they were playing chess. One would produce a picture, the other would respond. By 1913, they had transformed the very language of Western art.